Do we have questions about which ones were, which ones weren't, and why? So
why was 1 equals 2 over
this x over 2? Yeah. Because this can be rewritten as 1/2 x. So that one less.
Yeah.
Any others in that first one? Remember that you can also graph these, see, are they lines, do they go through the origin, is the slope the same? Great, so that was 6. Did you get the ones correct and not the others? If you started missing some, then you started missing ones. For this one, you needed to find the direct variation equation. So find your k first, divide these two. And then after that, put this back in to your direct variation equation. So 3 points. Did you solve for k correctly? Did you get the correct k value? And then did you put it back in correctly? Questions on that? For 3, because we have different variables, you need to set up your original equation using those variables. A equals kb. Some of you were doing the equation for k, which was also fine. I accepted that. Find your k value. A would be like your y, b would be like your x. So this would be -7 over -3. Some of you were putting 7/3 as a decimal instead of leaving it as a fraction. If the decimal is repeating, just leave it as a fraction. Right. Then in our equation, A equals 7 over 3b. You had A. You didn't have B. Some of you switched those and ended up multiplying 7/3 and 14. Then to solve for B, you could have done one of two things. Either divided both sides by 7/3. Doesn't really look nice because it has a bunch of fractions within each other. Or take this fraction, flip it, and multiply it on both sides. Some of you that did this mixed that. You multiplied on both sides, but the wrong fraction, or you divided on both sides and you tried to flip it. So don't do both. And then that final answer was 6. So the points on this were, did you set up your original equation with the original variables? Did you solve for k and then simplify it? Did you solve for b and then that answer? Questions on that one? Or was similar, except it gave you variables in this word problem. So g is like your y, m is like your x, but still use g and m. So your equation would be g equals km. Then you can use the numbers they gave you, which were 200, that would be like your x or your m, and 9, your y or your g. To find k, so you could have either left this as 9 over 200 because it doesn't simplify, or found the decimal. Some of you put 0.45 instead of 0.045, which threw off your answers. Be careful with that. Then this is looking for how many gallons are required for this many miles. So G equals 0.045 times 315. And then it was like 14. So you could have put 14.175, 14.18, 14.2. Any of those were fine. Some of you put 14 point whatever G. I don't know what G is. You need to put gallons. if you multiplied incorrectly, you probably did not get that answer. But the points on this one were the correct setting up the equation, solving for k, or getting k, solving for g, and getting g. Questions on that one? Five was very similar, except now you need to determine your variables. So we know these are going to be important. It says the interest before varies directly, so that's your y. You could have called it a different variable, did not matter. And then the amount deposited was x. So you say your original equation if you use the variables y equals kx. If you change the variables, just put whatever those will be. Find your k value, 61.5 over 1500. This needed to be simplified, or at least find the decimal, because you have a decimal within a fraction. So 0.041 was that answer for k. Then you're looking for the interest if she had 2,000. And that was the So the 6 points here were, did you define your variables? Which one's y, which one's x, or whatever you call them? Set up your original equation. Solve for k, get the k answer, solve for y, get the y answer. Questions on that one? Okay. On the next page, the ones that were inverse were only these two. If you said this one, I gave you credit for it because you saw x was in the denominator, so that was fine. This is not technically an answer because of this. Like directed also needs to not have a b. So if you put that, I gave you credit for it. If you didn't put that, then you got it right anyway. So you didn't miss that point if you selected that. Questions on any of these, why they are not inverse? And then for 7, you had to find the inverse variation equation. Multiply these two numbers together to find k. And then put that number into your equation. So just like direct, solve for k, get the correct k, and then put it back in. For 8, you were already given x and y, so you don't need to put the original equation. You can if you want. To solve for k, we need to multiply these two together. But when you do that, you end up with a repeating set of decimals, so just leave it as a fraction. Then if you put this back in your equation, it would look something like this. We know our y value is 9.1. So if you did it this way, you would need to multiply both sides by x. Multiplying or dividing by 13 over 7 wouldn't get x out of the denominator. And then divide both sides by 13. Also, some of you were putting the equation like k equals, which was fine as long as it matched and it worked. So you would put in your alpha y equals, put in your fraction, come out of that and divide 9.1. And then 0.2, 0.204, 0.2041, however many decimals you wanted to put. was that final answer. Questions on 8. If there are any of these that you did not get, I would definitely be writing these down so you don't make the same mistakes on the test. For 9, it gives you a 0.24. That's your x and y. Multiply those together. And then put that in your equation. And 11, the point value are the same as the direct. So set up your original equation. You have b and p, so this would be b equals k over p. B is like your y, p is like your x, but still use your original. To find k, we're going to multiply 13 and 27. Some of you were putting 27 and something else, and I don't know where you got that number from. That should be 351. Then it's looking for the volume. So V equals, we have our K, and our pressure is 9. So when we divide that, I think it was 39. Our units for volume were cubic feet, so that's what we would put here. Volume is not a label. Questions on that one? So then points again, we're setting up your equation, solving for K, getting K, solving for V, getting V. Yeah, good.
So you said when you wrote set up original equation, that would be
V equals K over V. 11 did not have variables, so pick whatever variables you want. Number of revolutions was your y, radius was your x, or other variables if you chose to use those. So your original equation would be y equals k over x. Unless you change the variables, then it'd be whatever you put. We have a 12-inch radius, that is our x. Makes 100 revolutions, our y. Use that to find k. Then it asks how many revolutions, so that's our y. We're given x. So we would divide that. To get 80. So the 6th point here is defining your variables, which variable is which, and then all the others are the same. Questions on that one? And then on the last page, the first 4 were just writing the equation. So y varies jointly as m and n. Jointly is the the variables are going to be right next to each other. Each of these need a k. So y equals k m n. For 13, a varies inversely as b would be a equals k over b. And directly as c, so you can either put it next to it or put it in the numerator. Some of you were putting C in the bottom, and unless it's set inversely as the product of B and C, you wouldn't put it there. Alright, so that was worth 2 points. Did you do the inversely right and the directly right? W varies inversely as the square root of B was W equals K over the square root of B. And then M varies point B would be M equals K and O, and inversely as P all divided by. So again, that was 2 points, the jointly and the inversely. Questions on those 4? As you were doing these, you should have noticed that each one is set up to look like one of these, so that was meant to help you. So C very jointly as A and T, that's very much like 12. So C equals K AT. Put in your variable, or put in your numbers. We have 20 equals K times 1 times 5. And start solving for K. Divide both sides by 5, and K is 4. Then use that K value and the other numbers given. So C is now 16, K is 4, A is 2, we don't know T. And solve for T. So we have 8T. Divide both sides by 8, and T should be 2. So this was 5 points. Did you set up the equation, solve for K, get K, solve for T, get? Questions on that one? A varies inversely as B and directly as C is exactly the same wording as 13. So it would look like one of those two. A equals K over B times C, or A equals KC over 2. Either or. So the extra point here is, did you set this up correctly, both inversely and directly? I'm going to use this one. So we have 1/2 equals K, our C is 2, B is 56. How you solve this doesn't really matter as long as it makes sense mathematically. You can either simplify this, or you can multiply by 56 and then divide by 2, or multiply by the reciprocal, either or. I'm going to simplify. So 2 over 56 would be 1 over 28, and then cross multiply. So that K equals 14. Then go back and find B. So A was 14, K is 14, C is 1, and we don't know B. So to get B by itself, we would multiply both sides by B first to get it out of the denominator, and then divide by 4. So B should have been 1. Some of you were getting really big numbers because you put C in the denominator, which changed everything. Questions on 17? B varies inversely as the square of B is very similar to this one, this square, not square root. So B equals K over B squared. should have been that equation. And then they tell us b is 2, b is 5. So 5 squared is 25. Multiply both sides by 25 so that k is 50. Some of you got to that point, but then things got messy when you went to solve for b. I'm going to do that down here. Okay, so we're looking for b. b is 4. Some of you multiplied both sides by 50, which would not get b out of the denominator. You would need to multiply both sides by b squared. And then divide by both sides by 4. And then take the square root of that. So I did this up here, but second x squared 12.5, 3.5, 3.54, 3.5, 35, whatever decimals you want to use there. That should have been your answer. Questions on that one? And then this last one. If the costs C vary fluently, so C equals K times the width and length, you can use W and L, X and Y, Y and Z, whatever letters you want. The debt costs $1,200 when the width is 12 and the length is 20. Use those numbers, start solving for K, multiply those together, and then divide. So 5 should have been the answer. And then put that back in. We're now looking for the cost of the deck when the width and length are both 10. So 500 should have been your final answer. Questions on that? Are there any general or specific questions we have? Anything you want me to go back to, re-explain? So, I will say the test is long. So you may not have time to finish today. Wednesday is the flex day, so you'll have time then. You'll also have tomorrow morning and afternoon if you want to come work on it then. So work as much as you can around the 10-minute mark. If that's like I'm done, not done with the test, but done working, then we'll talk about that then. And I'll give you post-it notes to say which ones you're finished with or whatever. But keep working. Make sure you show your work on every problem. Anyone have any questions before you take your test? Eva? Individual. Yes. Directly, like jointly just has more variables. So next to each other.